Hey friends, back with another episode with a very special guest. Her name is Alexandria Anderson. Alexandria is a senior advisor here at Ontario Power Generation for the Stakeholder Relations team. I want to give her a chance to introduce herself. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. As you said, I'm one of the senior advisors here in the both the stakeholder relations and the federal relations department. Been at OPG for about 7 years now, so getting up there, and predominantly have been in the corporate relations department for the entire time. Background in PR communications as well, and then did a short stint in public policy. So doing very much what I like to do, but also saving the environment.
Alexandria, when it comes to the nuclear energy industry, there's a whole lot of engineers, right? And a lot of technical folks, which is great because they're running the plant. However, there's another world, right, outside of that. And I think with this episode, I really want to showcase that. Tell us a little bit about the nuclear energy industry and when it comes to stakeholder relations and communications.
Yeah, happy to. Okay, so a little bit about my background. So I started basically straight out of school, coming into OPG. I will say that I did little stints here and there, interning, doing a few co-op and entry-level positions before I started, but nothing to do with energy. Actually didn't even know that nuclear was in Ontario prior to working here, which is crazy. So I started off as the executive assistant to the vice president of stakeholder relations, and has worked my way up from there to obviously being in the GR department now. I feel like we get that quite often. It's a huge misconception in the nuclear industry that you have to be an engineer, you have to be a scientist, you have to be really into STEM in order to work here. I am horrible at anything STEM. Wasn't even something that I would consider going into, so kind of funny that this is where I ended up. But no, there's so many different avenues and opportunities within the nuclear industry. It is insane. I feel like every day I learn something new. I was just talking about how, we have a meteorologist that works here. We have skilled trades. If you want to be in, marketing, communications, you want to be in media relations, literally anything that you can think of. Even me just coming from a conference last week based on the nuclear, it's, the amount of students, the amount of people that are looking for a whole bunch of different variety of work, each year seems to change. We're getting more innovative, we're getting more young, which is awesome. It's the best time to work in the nuclear industry.
So Alexander, tell me a little bit about how you found out about the nuclear energy industry. Like how did you even figure that out? And when you were in your undergrad, and tell us a little bit about your educational background and where you envisioned yourself and how things changed when you took on this new career.
Yeah, okay. So background, I started doing my undergrad in communications and public relations, and wanted to be Olivia Pope, if we know who that is. Don't come for me.
You're listening to this, know who that is.
Okay, well, I wanted to be like international relations more so. So still kind of, in the realm, but I was more so going into like a more of a fashion or like a PRE firm type of consulting, we should say. And I got a call from a recruiter. If we have any students on the line, I would say make friends with some recruiters. They came to my university. I met friends with one of them, and she got me 2 interviews. One was OPG, and one was a retail store. It's the Bay. And I interviewed for both. I did the Bay one first, and quite frankly, that is the one that I actually wanted that discount. And then I had my OPG interview, and quite frankly, I didn't prepare for it as much as I should have. Me being on that website, on the OPG website, and just going through everything, it was insane to me. I had no idea. Even the difference between OPG and Hydro One, didn't know. And I think now that I'm in it and I'm talking to like my family members and my friends about it, no one knows. It's almost inspiring and like rewarding being able to teach people about the industry and what we do here, because we're definitely underappreciated, or people don't know about it. So it took me a while to actually figure out where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. I'm so happy though, and so grateful for the career that I've had at OPG. Starting in as an assistant, it really got me to be able to meet with the different people and different executives throughout the company. And it's something that I often promote with people that are trying to find their way in is to start as an assistant. Quite honestly, I think my old VP opened so many doors for me, and allowed me to really see that maybe stakeholder relations isn't what I want to do, or media relations isn't what I wanted to do. Maybe I do want to do GR. Maybe this is where your niche is, and you just need to meet those right people within the industry. And I think that's another thing about the nuclear industry, and I'm sure you can say it as well, is we're very supportive of each other. We're all trying to grow, we're all trying to learn, we're all trying to share best practices, and it is a complete 180 to some of the other industries that are, a little bit more competitive with each other when you're first entering. This one, we all want to collaborate, we all want to learn, we all want to grow together, and it was such a journey, learning and being able to be the assistant in those rooms with all the executives and just soaking it all in for a year and then figuring out where I wanted to go.
So tell me about the opportunities that are out there in terms of stakeholder relations. You point out government relations, there's media relations. Tell us a little bit about those career paths and how you determine that government relations is for you.
I would say the corporate affairs department has various different roles in there. Community relations is one, stakeholder relations is one, media relations, and quite honestly, I don't want to list all of them, but there's a lot of different roles that you can get into in the corporate affairs department. Sorry. I actually, when I first started, my VP, as I was saying, he sat me in a room and he was like, if I can give you any job at OPG that you want right now, what would it be? And my answer was crisis communications was actually what I wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to do media relations. I wanted to be the person on the TV when they oh my God, the plant is doing this, what's happening, and I'm the star of the show type of thing. Quickly realized that that's not what I'm passionate about. It's not something that interests me, and I thought that 5-10 years down the road, I'd be like, maybe this isn't the path that I should have taken. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It actually still is a very, very interesting role, and I work very closely with that group. But I found that I was making more of a difference, or it was a little bit more rewarding, me being able to go to my local politician and talk about climate change and talk about nuclear and talk about energy as a whole. Sorry. The difference that the industry is making is rewarding, right? And they have so many questions, and not all of them, but they're interested in it. They want to learn more. The difference from when I first started in the GR team to where I am now, the government's view on nuclear is completely different. Full 180, maybe not full 180, but the support keeps growing and growing and growing. And I think that's what continues to make me passionate about it. It's every time we're at a Hill Day or a lobby day and you're talking to different politicians, and it's not just politicians that you're talking to, right? You're talking to advisors, you're talking to different associations, you're talking to anybody that generally has any sort of influence within government, and just advocating on things that you're already passionate about. Done. Done. That's what I want to do. That's where I am, and I love it and I soak it up. Media relations, similar thing. You're obviously just doing that with the media. And then community relations is also a big one with us. Obviously, we're a very, very large company and we span all over the province, and you want to be able to have those relationships with people that you could potentially be impacting, right? We want to hear from you just as much as you want to hear from us. And I think that's why this group is really where I excel. I do like to do this. I like to talk. I like to advocate. I like to meet new people. And if that's something that you're interested in, then this is definitely a field where you can definitely find a multifaceted ways of engaging with community, engaging with the public on clean energy, on nuclear, on just about anything.
Yeah, thanks for that summary. And government relations is such an important, high impact role, right? So tell me a little bit about the impact that you're able to make with GR, and also what are some strategies that you deploy within the government relations in general, and when it comes to energy and communicating with these members of parliament, and at what levels have you had experience with that?
Okay, so first I would say it depends on who you're speaking to, right? You have to have a different strategy for the different governments and different politicians. You always need to do your background on who you're speaking to and your background on where this government's trying to go. We have a very supportive provincial government right now, and it's easy to talk to them about the different economic benefits that our industry brings. very understanding of it. And same thing federally, supportive, but you have to speak in a different way, where climate change is one of their biggest concerns right now. And with the invasion of the Ukraine from Russia, energy security is top of mind. That's all we want to talk about. That's all you want to hear. And that's where I come in. I can give you a great solution. Let me explain to you 101 how the nuclear industry can help you get there. You know, you need us, I think, quite frankly, and a lot of politicians, a lot of people in general just don't actually understand the impacts of the nuclear industry, what we do, what we're trying to achieve. I think another thing is, nuclear doesn't often get classified as clean when we're talking about clean energy sources. And that is a big thing with the GR team here at OPG. Odd that when we're talking about energy security or cleaning the grid or, Canada's climate change goals, and we're talking about different pathways to get there, and nuclear isn't considered in there. It is now, but it's almost a separate line when you're talking about clean energy. We're always looking at the solars, we're always looking at wind, hydro, and then nuclear kind of has its own little bucket, which sometimes it's fine, but sometimes it's not, because it is clean. And we want to just have those conversations. It's not necessarily that you need to always agree with me, and a lot of politicians don't. A lot of people, a lot of stakeholders don't, and quite frankly, but it's just, I want to be a resource to you. You know that you can come to me, you can ask me questions, and I can show you where you can find your factual information. And again, whether you agree with it or not, it's just a discussion, right? You just want to have a friendly debate, but friendly conversation about different pathways to get there. And we'll all have different ways different generators are also going to have different ways. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of the change in government is happening where we're now thinking that we need to work together. All technologies are going to be needed in order for us to get to our net zero goals. And that's where we are. And I think it's great that we're now acknowledging that and accepting that, and people are understanding that nuclear is going to have to play a part of it.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your time in provincial relations versus federal relations, for the Canadian government. How was that different, and how did the dynamics change there?
First, I don't want to speak too closely on the provincial relations staff because I did work stakeholder relations when I was in the provincial team. So a little bit different. However, I do know the provincial government is our shareholders, so you're going to have a different relationship than you are federally. In Ontario, we are quite large. People do know who we are. We have large nuclear assets here. It's not crazy to have the conversation with stakeholders within Ontario, and they know who we are and they know what we do, at least to a certain extent. When you go federally, you get a lot of different opinions. You're talking to Alberta, and very different opinions than Ontario, BC, Quebec, all very, very different policies, all very, very different outlooks on how the energy system should look, and that's okay. We can figure out a way where we can all work together, but very different conversations. Their awareness of how the energy systems work are different, right? Because in Canada, energy is provincially regulated. So when you go federally and they have these huge climate change goals and these energy security goals, and you want to achieve them all, but you can't necessarily go into provincial jurisdiction. It's like a little bit of a tug and pull. It sometimes gets a little frustrating, and you can have some different. It can slow things down, quite frankly, quite a bit. We have 2050 in energy is like tomorrow, so we really should be talking about these things like 10 years ago, and now we're at a point where we need to go, and provincial governments and federal governments really do need to work together. So sometimes it's great to leverage the provincial government with owning a good chunk of the energy systems all throughout Canada to speak to the federal government about their priorities and what they need. And now you are seeing that a lot more than you have in the past 5 years. We have a lot of the provincial, federal working roundtables now where we're all trying to figure out the best path forward for each jurisdiction rather than a broad energy strategy from the federal government trying to push it down. It's not going to work. And vice versa. So we're getting a little bit better on the two, but again, it's a little bit of a different strategy. Yeah, no, I think we're getting there. It's getting incredibly better with the collaboration between the two. Sometimes it's a little bit challenging when you have different governments, right? We obviously have a conservative provincial government and a liberal federal government, and sometimes they very, very much do clash. And this time it's beautiful. We're all working together with a common goal of whatever your goal might be, but we are all trying to get to net zero. We're all trying to electrify the grid. We're all trying to make the energy system a little bit better for ratepayers and for communities. And that's where we're going. And I love to see that now.
That's great. That's great. So, Alexandria, tell me a little bit about your passions in the industry. How have those passions developed, and what keeps you going every day here at a nuclear utility?
Yeah, so I got a few of them. I would say one of the biggest ones is ED&I at within the industry. I will say, and I mentioned it briefly. We were at a nuclear conference last week, and it was actually amazing to see the amount of women that were there. It's again 7 years. It's changed quite a bit, but would love to see more people of racialized backgrounds and different versions of diversity and inclusion, other than just gender. We're getting there, and it's definitely a journey. And we all have our ED&I strategies, our reconciliation action plans, and I'm loving to see it. Would just love to see it move a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, and some new faces. We are definitely getting younger as well, which is great. But I find a hard time sometimes going into rooms and not seeing anyone that looks like me. It definitely makes you feel that you don't belong, or maybe you shouldn't be here, or, is this the right area for me? And that's something that's really tugged at my heartstrings for quite some time. And it's not just for me. It's, last week when I was at the conference, and, it's not my story to tell, so I don't want to get too much into the background, but I met this amazing woman there. And, she was telling me about some of the stories that she's had, being LGBTQ. She has a very different story than I have, being a racialized woman, and it honestly broke my heart just hearing some of the stories of what she has to deal with on a regular basis, and the comments that she gets. It's like insane at this point. It's 2023, we shouldn't be dealing with this still, but like we are, and we need to talk about it and not just sweep it under the rug. And I love that she was able to come to me and be like, I see your experience. I want to share mine so that you can understand that it's not just a racialized issue. There's this whole other ecosystem to this that not everybody's aware of. So it's something that I don't necessarily know how to change, trying the best that I can. And, you find really great allies throughout the company that are willing to talk about it. I would say one great thing about, where I work is our CEO is amazing. He's a really, really great ally. He goes to we have these committees where we meet all the racialized employees at OPG, and he's regularly on there. He gives feedback. He helps us to move forward, because it is hard when there's not a lot of diversity in executive realm, and that's not it like throughout the industry. You see a lot of panels, and they're all a lot of people that look the exact same. And it's something that's obviously not going to change overnight. Probably won't even change in the next couple of years, but you got to do what you got to do to try and change that. So if even it's just talking on a podcast, or just, going to those little round tables within your company and talking about it, it's a small step forward, but something that I'm trying to actively find a way to continue to advocate on.
Yeah, I think that's a really important topic, and thanks for sharing your experiences, Alexandria. I think we brought this up in the podcast that I had with Lawrence as well, that utilities need to reflect the demographics that of people that are surrounding them, right? And here in Toronto and Ontario, a huge shift. There've been huge shifts in our demographics changing, right? And the utility needs to somehow reflect that, right? And I think when it comes to the nuclear energy industry, I feel like one of the main reasons why it's not always as trusted by the people is because the people in that industry don't necessarily always reflect the communities that surround it. So I think that's a really great message to share. And maybe if you want to share more about, I think the Black North Initiative. I think something that utilities here in Canada are partnering up with, or anything else. I would love to learn about that.
Yeah, the Black North Initiative is awesome. I will say, it's not something that I've worked with personally, and I would say that I've been too deep dive into it. I was honored to be able to go to the Black North Gala last month, and quite honestly, it changed my entire perspective on my career. I got into a rhythm of being comfortable. And again, it's not, I got into a rhythm of just like, I'm okay where I am. I'm not necessarily trying to become our CEO tomorrow, or, I don't need to take over the world. But I'm okay where I am. And going to that gala and hearing Wes Hall talk about the lack of not just racialized people, but especially racialized women in executive roles within Canada is insane. It was astonishing to me, and it was inspiring, where I feel like I now need to try a little harder. I now need to go a little further. I don't want, maybe I'll be the first, but I sure as hell I'm not going to be the last, and I want to make sure that there's more women that look like me within the industry, and we're moving up and we're helping other women. It's it was very eye-opening, and I'm incredibly grateful for organizations like the Black North. There's also Women in Nuclear. There's a whole bunch of gambits out there that are really, really trying to help. But the Black North will always have a special place in my heart now after that gala. It was incredible to see, and I'm so proud of working for an organization that supports it.
You're trailblazing that path in this industry. So that's really inspiring for myself. So I love hearing those stories, and also, when it comes to skill acquisition, and when it comes to developing an interest for something like nuclear, what would you say for someone that's studying public relations in university, someone that has a kind of an interest, potentially in energy policy, or and may want to experiment with a career like this? What would you tell them?
There's a certain set of skill sets that you're going to have in order to be part of the energy policy group or the energy GR team. If you have a passion for environment, or making a difference in any way, and I know a good chunk of millennials / Gen Zs are in that realm now, where it is very important to us, and we are thinking about not only our futures, but our children's futures and our grandchildren's futures. And that's a great place to start, is just how you can make a small difference. There's different areas of policies that you can focus on, whether it's finance or just nuclear specific. There's so much depth to it, that you can absolutely find something that you're interested in, but you have to find that niche. I found that was a hard thing for me for the first little bit, was finding out like what I was interested in, and what would help me continue to learn and grow and want to come into work. And as soon as I realized, climate change is incredibly important to me, and it's not necessarily nuclear, but the impacts that nuclear has to that is why I'm here. So there's a lot of people that are here just because they love nuclear, and that's cool. And nuclear is great, but I want to save the world. I want to save the planet. I want to make it cleaner for my family. And that's why I went into GR specifically. It's great to be able to talk to people about it. And that is different than policy, I will say, though. So there's a difference between going into GR, there's policy, but there's also advocacy, and those are different things, right? So we do have the policy folks, and yes, I am one of them, and you are reviewing policies constantly. But there's also the stakeholder part of GR, where you are actually advocating and speaking, I guess, more high level on things that are happening within the industry, and whatever your objectives are. So keep that in mind, is you don't necessarily need to be a policy nerd in order to go into GR. There are many different skills. I definitely did not have a GR background prior to going into GR. As I said, I was in PR, and quite frankly wanted to go into fashion. So like completely different from what I actually thought I would end up doing. And you definitely can learn it on the spot, but like the policy is definitely very different than the stakeholder PR side of our team. And that is a lot of talking. That's a lot of relationship building. You need to have great conflict management skills, I would say, is probably a good skill to have in our group, and really just understanding that not everyone's going to agree with you, especially when you're working in a more of a controversial field. Not everyone's going to agree that nuclear can save the world, and that's totally fine. Again, it's just my job to be a resource to you, to be able to have these conversations with you and point you in the right direction to find the information that you need. If you do not agree, you don't agree, and that's okay.
Are there any experiences within government relations, moments that you were very proud of, and you look back at and you're like, wow, like I was successful here?
It's a team effort. We're not going to say me, okay? So one that I will share is definitely, the last 18 months, just being able to get the word nuclear in the federal budget is crazy. Like insane that they're even like environment would never even take meetings with us before, and now we're slowly creeping in. And again, that is not an Alexandria win or even my company win, but that is an industry win, and incredibly proud that I had something to do with it at least. But also on that, so I was able to go to COP a couple years ago. So I was in Scotland, and they are generally a nuclear friendly, obviously, country, but when you have environmentalists from all over the world coming in basically looking to fight you, it was a rewarding experience. I will definitely say it opened my eyes to, one, the amount of people that are actually supportive, especially in Europe. It's very different than it is in Canada. You don't have to explain certain things to folks as in depth that you do here. Definitely less risk averse. But the people that don't agree with you are very much in your face and very loud about it, and they do not stop. So, just being able to handle those situations with a little bit of grace and just, let's talk about it. I made a lot of friends there, and half of the friends were not our friends. Like, they did not want to be our friends. But something that I am proud of, that I do continue those relationships. We still talk. And quite frankly, sometimes we go out for drinks and it's just a debate. Like, you tell me your spiel and I'll tell you mine. And it's like a friendly, conversation. But being able to continue those and not make enemies, which is the goal, right? We just want to be able to inform, is rewarding.
It's awesome that you're able to change those hearts and minds, but also even if you're not, you're still like happy in that position, right? And you still see it as a success because you tried.
Yeah. And you also just know a little bit more, right? You're able to say, okay, maybe I disagree with you, but a lot of times I do feel that you went back and you maybe did a little bit of research and you figured something out. Example, I actually had one person, I went to high school with him actually, but he messaged me on LinkedIn, and I had posted something about nuclear waste, and he, obviously not very supportive. He gave me this long paragraph, and, I just sent him a couple articles, and he was just like, happy to take a call with you anytime you want. I know you're not in the energy or nuclear industry at all, but happy to talk to you about it. And, we had a little bit of a conversation, and it took him a year. But a year later, I got a message, and he was like, you know what, I want to apologize. You were right. And it's just those little wins, you're like, I told you, I knew you're going to come around. But you just need to do it yourself. So I'm not going to argue with you of who's right in the situation. I just want to give you some information that you maybe didn't have before. And when they do, and it does click in or they do come around, it is very, very rewarding.
That's great. That's great. And I'm pretty sure at a federal level and a provincial level, like where you're influencing entire government policies to build these reactors, I'm sure that would probably be a huge win for the entire industry that you guys help facilitate.
Yeah, there's actually like a study going on in the federal government of just SMRs. And that's like, I don't know. I think it's like insane to see because it wasn't there even 3 years ago. You know, we weren't talking this confidently about nuclear, and now it's like, okay, let's think about the economics here. Let's think about how this is going to help advance our energy goals, our energy security goals, our climate goals. All of that is now being considered, and it wasn't even on the table a couple years ago. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
That's great. That's phenomenal. And where do you see the future of the industry heading in terms of in terms of stakeholder relations, in terms of government relations? Are there any major changes to that field that you think are approaching, since governments are becoming more accepting toward nuclear? How are these roles changing to reflect these new changes in policy and acceptance?
I think I think we're just going to get bigger, quite frankly. I think, I have a small and mighty team of two right now, and, it's soon becoming a team of four, and we're growing and we're going, and that's literally because the government is changing its mind, right? We're slowly getting there. We're slowly getting more and more questions, more and more meetings, more and more briefings, and I think, even the innovative portion of the nuclear industry has caught a lot of attention. So when you're talking isotopes, what the conference last week, they had Spot the Dog. If you guys have seen that, it's really cool, but it brings so much attention from not just the elected officials, but also young generation that's like, okay, this is really, really cool. We're all trying to figure out different ways to advance our goals. And whether it's through like AI and tech, or if it's through lobbying your federal government, we're all in that room. We were all at the conference, and we were all trying to figure out how to work together to get there. And, that was the largest conference I think we've been to in just nuclear in Canada, and completely sold out. Like, it was insane the amount of people there. It was insane the passion there. And I don't think that I've seen that in quite some time. So it's, again, like you even had COP. That was the first time that nuclear has really been on the docket, right? It's never been there before. And then you had it again last year in Egypt. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And I think governments are now just coming around, and they just want to talk about it more and more, especially because Canada is a leader in this industry. And I don't think we've leveraged the fact that we're the best at it, or at least one of the best in it, just light bulbs are starting to click, and we're all just starting to get really, really excited. SMRs, I think we're going to see that very much so a lot over the next couple of years. Obviously in Ontario, but the conversations between the Saskatchewan government and the Alberta government is increasingly getting stronger and stronger. And we all want to find ways to collaborate with each other. We all want to work together. We all just want to figure out how to get to our pathways, but might have different goals. But nuclear is at least part of all of those conversations, and loving to see it.
I love the fact that you're sharing what our future looks like, right? And right now, there's a turning point, right? And we're heading in a positive direction, which is great, and hopefully it keeps going in that direction. So I think this was a great conversation, Alexandria. Is there any last words or any last thoughts you'd like to share with folks here on the podcast?
The best way to get involved is to lobby your government, and you don't have to be big, doesn't have to be small. You can write a letter, you can go talk to your local mayor, but the best way to get involved in the nuclear industry, or at least help advance the messaging, is to advocate, is to just talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your local politicians. It's really the simplest things that you can do that can really advance the industry. SMRs were not a thing a couple years ago, and even my fiance, who has absolutely no idea what I do all day, can talk about SMRs now. So we're getting there.
That's great. I love that last message that you can make a difference, no matter if you're a student, high school student, elementary school, and living in your neighborhood, right? And and inform people about technologies to make that difference, to make that large scale difference, right? So really appreciate this conversation, Alexandria. Thanks for giving us a deep dive into the world of stakeholder relations, public relations, and government relations. Really, really appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks.